The world of Africa is dealing with a scourge. Gambling and sports betting is on the rise and causing concern among governments on how to curtail the craze and hunger to get rich quick. That's our focus this week with me, Erik Njoka. Welcome to the show. The program starts right now.
At least 1,700 people fleeing violence between armed factions in South Sudan's northern Upper Nile state have crossed into Sudan, the state-owned Sudanese news agency SUNA has reported. The UN agency UNICEF had earlier said that violence between armed groups in Upper Nile state that started in August was forcing thousands of women and children to flee their homes amid reports of rising civilian deaths, injuries, and abductions. The clashes have since spread to Jonglei and Unity states. The UN said that the violence had killed at least 166 people. A member of Sudan's state-run Humanitarian Aid Commission says that large numbers of South Sudanese fleeing the violence had arrived in the border state of White Nile. He called on aid groups to provide urgent assistance to the refugees. The government's plan to deport migrants to Rwanda is lawful, the UK High Court has ruled. Although judges dismissed challenges against the policy as a whole, they ruled in favor of 8 asylum seekers. Lord Justice Lewis said the Home Secretary had not properly considered the individual cases and that they would need to be reconsidered. A hearing will take place in January to deal with any appeal applications. Deepening restrictions on ivory trafficking has led to an increase of the trade in hippopotamus teeth, wildlife campaigners are warning, with potentially serious effects for a species already listed as vulnerable to extinction. When the UK last June announced a near-total ban on the trade in elephant ivory, an animal welfare charity studied what happened in 3 widely used online marketplaces. Researchers say this pattern was clear as far back as 1989, when a worldwide ban on trade in ivory was first agreed, and has only intensified as governments have brought in new measures to tighten the ban. Like ivory, hippo teeth and tusks are often used for decorative carvings, but they are cheaper and easier to obtain. And Ghana's sovereign dollar bonds dropped more than 2 cents to the dollar after the government announced it was suspending payments on euro bonds, external commercial loans, and some bilateral debt. The country has been struggling to refinance its debt since the start of the year after downgrades by multiple credit ratings agencies on concerns it would not be able to issue new euro bonds. Ghana had already announced a domestic debt exchange program and said that an external restructuring was being negotiated with creditors. The IMF has said a comprehensive debt restructuring is a condition of its support.
Continent-wide, data on sports betting is not readily available, but snapshots from different countries show its growing popularity. Online gaming platforms have enjoyed recent growth driven by widening adoption of mobile payments and pandemic-era demand for digital entertainment. Much of the betting focuses on soccer games in Europe. Critics warn that sports betting in Africa is underpinned by widespread poverty, unemployment, and poor or non-existent regulation. However, the craze will not fade away anytime soon. Our World of Africa special reports this week examines why the gambling euphoria has turned into a huge problem in the continent.
Amid the noise from the Lagos traffic, nestled in the alley, huge street signboards dot the shops in these buildings. Construction worker Anyasi Jeffrey is here for his daily routine. And no, it's not to harness his computer skills. Jeffrey is here to gamble.
Betting for me started like 3 years ago, and it all boils down on me wanting to support my team. And my teams are Chelsea, and for the World Cup, I support France. And I've actually staked my money on France winning the World Cup.
He's not alone. In at least 5 African countries, gamblers and experts say that many see the growing sports betting industry as a source of regular income and a possible path out of poverty.
A friend of mine introduced me to the betting business. So he called me, said, come and invest in this. I told him, I don't know anything about this. He said, no, it's just normal the way we play, then we get our commission every Monday. So I said, okay. So I told my father, and my father said, okay, let's give it a try. So we did. So from first shop, I'm on my 8th shop.
A South African government survey from 2017, the most recent on gambling, found that sports betting grew 14% per year from 2008 to 2016. Even as the number of South Africans who gambled fell from 57% to a third of the country's adult population. Today, online sports betting makes up 45% of the South African gambling market, a starkly different picture to just 10 years ago when casinos held 80% of market share.
There is a significant growth in terms of the industry. And how do we measure that? We measure it in terms of the revenue contribution towards us. Their revenue contribution is measured by gross gambling revenue, which is money staked less money payout. For instance, it has increased by 50% from where it was before the lockdown. In terms of people that are coming forward and say they are addicted to gambling, we are also seeing the numbers increasing, and people, when they are asked to describe the mode that is mostly, they are mostly interested in, they cite sports betting.
You shouldn't come to a betting shop if you have stress taking your last monies to bet, because if you don't win, you'll collapse. People collapse here in the shop, and we never know if it is due to hunger or any other condition. People get hurt here. We've seen a lot of people that have collapsed here.
African gamblers are said to often count on winnings to fund daily needs.
The economic situation in Africa, but delimiting it to Nigeria, is not favorable. So people now see the aspect of football betting as an avenue to make quick money.
When I gamble, I'm very grateful with whatever I get from my winnings. Be it 200 rands or 150 rands, that is fine. There's no work in the township and no one will give you money, especially since there's no work. Accept any amount you receive and you will be able to close off expenses.
A Ugandan parliamentary committee earlier this year suggested banning daytime betting. Neighboring Kenya has reported declines in gambling since 2019, when the country imposed taxes on all bets, win or lose, and revoked the licenses of several major gambling companies after accusing the country's largest sports betting platform of tax evasion. A government survey found that respondents who saw gambling as a good source of income fell by half from 2019 to 2021, from 22.7% to 11.2%. For regular gamblers, especially those who stake money that isn't theirs, this World Cup has been punishing. Bureau Report, World of Africa.
There has been a significant rise in the number of school dropouts in Nigeria in the recent years. Number of those children who are denied access to education, which is not their fault, keeps swelling each year. According to child rights activists and experts, this is worrisome, as these children might end up being recruited by terror outfits like the Boko Haram. So what's preventing these kids from accessing the most basic education? Let's find out from this next report by our correspondent Louisa Olaniyi in Lagos.
The growing number of out-of-school children in Nigeria is worrisome. According to latest UNESCO data, Nigeria now has about 20 million out-of-school children, which is about 10% of the country's 200 million population. Various factors have been attributed to the worrisome trend, and stakeholders say there is an urgent need to mobilize more resources.
Poverty is the single most important factor that keeps children out of school. When you combine that with cultural norms around girls, then if the family has to make a choice as to whether they'll send a boy or a girl to school, they would generally send a boy to school. So poverty is a big factor that we need to consider.
Something drastic has to be done about it, because we know that when children are not occupied, some of them are in their teenage age, some of them are in their puberty, preteen, and then some of them are children learning fast. If they have nothing to do, then they will become, hub for incubating negative trends in society.
For founders of Chess in Slum, an initiative to provide teaching and mentorship to underprivileged kids, the game of chess is an escape from the difficulties of everyday life, as children from the Majidun community struggle to fend for themselves.
Basically, the idea was to use the game of chess to give these kids a better future, give them hope, give them dream. Thanks to the convener, Babatunde Onokoya Daniel. Yeah. So we want to use the game of chess because game of chess is supposed to be a game for prestigious people, for kings and queens, for the noble people. Yeah, who could have thought of kids who have never been to school before play chess? So we want to change that narrative.
5 years ago, I do stay at home, just looking, doing this, helping people on errands, and immediately chess came into my life. Things have changed. I've been able to get serious by education and been to many places that I never dreamt of going before. Places like having international passport entry, airplane. I visited Nigeria and the African Youth Chess Championship 2019, and that was a good achievement for me.
Àwọn ọmọ tí ó lọ school pọ̀ gan. Ṣé yín wọ́n pọ̀ gan tán lọ sí school. Ìmí owó, ìmí kò níyà. Ṣé yín ìmí ò níyà tí ó dẹ̀ sí ẹ̀pà. Ìmí á lọ school kò sí owó tán máa fi ràwé fún, kò sí anything, kò sí nǹkan ṣé yín. So àwọn ọmọ tí ó lọ school pọ̀ gan. Even when we mention 4 or 5 nínú Majidun, at least 10 tí parents wọn lágbára.
Despite various public-private partnerships and government interventions, the number of out-of-school children keeps rising, especially in the northern part of the country. Government officials say efforts are being made jointly with the World Bank to reinstate these kids.
All the 9 countries have this phenomena. And in the Federal Ministry of Education or in Nigeria, I can tell you we are trying to create more access in terms of carrying out enrollment drive campaigns, grant sensitization, some other programs coming up, especially some World Bank projects to overcome or reduce the number of out-of-school children.
The right to free and basic education is an entitlement of every child, yet the number of out-of-school children across the world is alarming. According to UNICEF report, 1 in every 5 out-of-school children across the world is a Nigerian, and this deprivation varies according to states in the country, with the northern parts of the country bearing the brunt due to insecurity, cultural norms, and lack of parental care. From Lagos, Nigeria, Louisa Olaniyi, WION World is One.
Hundreds of animals, including elephants and endangered Gravis zebras, have died in Kenyan wildlife reserves during East Africa's worst drought in decades. The Kenya Wildlife Service and other bodies counted the deaths of 205 elephants, 512 wildebeests, 381 common zebras, 51 buffaloes, 49 Gravis zebras, and 12 giraffes in the past 9 months. Here now is a report from the Amboseli National Park.
This decaying baby elephant is just a glimpse of a far wider disaster. Such disturbing sights have become all too familiar, a reflection of the vicious drought sweeping across the Horn of Africa.
Elephant since June, there's a very bad drought because we didn't get enough rain. The long rain, the short rain, we didn't get enough. So we have been losing a lot of animals, and elephants have been dying a lot. So this is one of the one they have been dying because of the drought.
Parts of Kenya have experienced 4 consecutive seasons of inadequate rain in the past 2 years, with dire effects for people and animals, including livestock. The worst affected ecosystems are home to some of Kenya's most visited national parks, reserves and conservancies, including the Amboseli, Tsavo and Laikipia Samburu areas. This dead elephant wandered into a human settlement in Wamba, a small town in Samburu County, and killed a woman at a waterfront. Its carcass is now serving as a valuable meat for locals struggling with hunger.
Nimeumia na njaa kwa muda mrefu nikimpata mnyama kama huyo.
I have suffered from hunger for a long time, and if I run into such a carcass, I would not think twice about eating it, as I have to eat to survive.
Nifike kesho pia.
Unprecedented dry spells, the worst drought in 40 years, have decimated East Africa's food and water resources. Experts believe conservation models must change and migratory corridors must be opened so the elephants can move to greener areas during drought.
Elephants drink too much water, from the 240 liters of water per day. And the drought is something to do with water and food. So the issue is, where we have reported cases of the animal dying is not actually within the park. It's basically outside the park. That tells you they were actually looking for either where they used to forage, the corridors, migratory routes that have severely been blocked by the human interface.
This time, the KWS is taking efforts to ensure that animals have a better chance of survival. In Amboseli, wildlife can feed on hay supplied every 2 days by park rangers. In Tsavo East National Park, about 140 kilometers to the north, KWS has drilled wells so that animals have water to drink. Despite these measures, that park lost 54 elephants between February and October this year.
The Kenyan economy depends entirely, in a big percentage, on wildlife tourism. So when we have visitors coming to the country, our main backbone economically is basically wildlife tourism. So when the numbers depreciate, obviously it becomes the concern of every Kenyan, the concern of every conservation party, and even the leadership.
Despite the grim forecast, many remain hopeful that the problems Kenya is going through are man-made, and therefore the solution should also come from them. Bureau Report, World of Africa.
Following their absence and failure to qualify for the 2002-2006 World Cups and losing the 2004 Africa Cup of Nations final to Tunisia, Morocco resorted to launching Mohammed VI Academy to search for football talents in the country. Morocco succeeded in graduating a new generation that was the core of the Atlas Lions team in the 2018 World Cup in Russia, before achieving a historic feat of reaching the semi-final match in the just concluded Qatar World Cup. Here now is a report from Rabat.
A bird's-eye view welcomes to the pitches of the Mohammed VI Football Academy and students playing football. 100 young Moroccans hope to emulate the success of alumni who took the national team to a World Cup semi-final. While many of the triumphant African Lions squad grew up abroad, 4 of those who were born in Morocco trained as youngsters at the nation's principal academy, which nurtures talent from across the country.
Regarding the players who were at the Mohammed Football Academy and are now playing with the national team at the 2022 World Cup, there are 4 players. Among them, you can see here in the class of 1996, there is Naif Fagard and Reda Tagnauti. In the class of 1997, you can see Yusuf N. Sairi, and in the class of 2000, there is Azzeddin Aunahi with the under-17 team. Here is Aunahi with the class of 2000.
Morocco spent $13 million to build the Mohammed VI Football Academy in 2010 when the kingdom's football scene was in the doldrums, lagging behind African counterparts after having failed to reach the World Cup since 1998. The three other national team players who studied and trained at the academy are Azzaddin Unahi, Naif Agerd and Ahmed Reda Tagnauti. The academy stretches over 17 hectares and has its own boarding house, restaurant, clinic, entertainment hall, swimming pool and classrooms, as well as 9 pitches, including a covered one. The curriculum combines training on the pitch with classroom coaching. Most students leave the academy with a bachelor's degree.
Players at Mohammed VI Academy go through 3 stages in order to reach the highest level. The first stage is recruitment, which is a key phase. Then there's the stage of improving the player's performance that happen in the academy over years of effort. The third stage that is very important is to help the player prepare his career to be ready to play at high level.
FIFA praised the academy, describing it as the jewel of Moroccan football and one of the largest and most successful sports centres in the world. FIFA published a report months before the start of the World Cup, praising Morocco's steps to discover and develop talent.
The World Cup participation of players who graduated from the academy and their run to reach the semi-finals for the first time in the history of Arabs in Africa gives a sense of pride and honor to all technical, medical and administrative staff who supported these players in reaching this high level and honoring Morocco on the world's biggest stages.
The Moroccan national team topped its group, which included Croatia, which lost to Argentina in the semi-finals, and Belgium, ranked second in the world. Bureau Report, World of Africa.
And that's our time on this episode on World of Africa. Find us on all our social media platforms and talk to us about the show. We appreciate feedback. Until next week, I'm Erik Njoka. It's goodbye from me.